so that's a little bit about me. As I mentioned, about 35 plus years. The last 20 in consulting, different industries. Right now I'm engaged with the largest private healthcare provider in Portugal. We are doing completely their new digital strategy using third generation electronic health record systems, combined with emerging technology around remote monitoring, artificial intelligence, and new practices around medicine. So those are the kind of projects that I usually support for clients. And I get to practice some of the things that I'm showing to you today with clients by using the methods to develop the content and the specific actions coming out of it. I also have been around IT for a while, so I've been doing Agile and IT service management and ISO 20000, which is the infrastructure side of things back in the 2000s. That was a time when service management was very popular, having incident and change management and basic architectures to be able to run IT professionally. So those things were my focus in the last decade, and I'm also a CISSP, so I've been around security issues for a long time as far as my focus and specialization. All right, so discussion agenda, I'm going to talk about how to start a business strategy and how do you actually link yourself if you're a project manager or working on an Agile project. How do you link yourself back to what's going on at the business level so that the CEO cares about what you're doing? How is it connected? This is a common issue that every organization we work with. Being able to tie it to specific metrics. Why should you care? Why should a CEO or COO care about a project that you're working on? Or if you're participating in deciding what that project is, what do you do to measure your success and your contribution to the business performance? So we'll talk a little bit about metrics. Then we'll talk about what is the latest trends in terms of digital technologies. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, conversational interfaces. These are all things that everybody's trying to figure out how it applies to their business. How do we evaluate those things? And then of course, value stream mapping, how to measure things, how to connect that to your specific projects within your IT or software development business, and then of course, critical success factors. All right, so starting from the top, why is this relevant? Pace of change has changed. I've been working with a lot of clients that used to do 3-year plans, 5-year plans. And in the last 5 years, those who kept doing it, they ended up completely putting it aside in the last 3 years. What happened was the drivers completely changed. Competitors completely changed. You have to get into a mode of being able to continuously evaluate and update your strategies. You cannot do those 2 to 4 to 5 year plans any longer. And for everybody, that means you have to figure out a way to think and innovate faster, create new value with existing clients and existing dimensions, be able to embrace experimentation. How do I know blockchain will work in this function? How do I know I can apply artificial intelligence to improve this service to a client? Well, the only way is to experiment. And there's principles within these methodologies that help you with that process. Also, you want to be able to transform from the traditional legacy silos of functions or function orientations, finance and marketing and operations and logistics, trying to figure out how to work together, to focus on holistic experiences for your customers, for your employees, and for your partners. When you build systems, the customer journeys have become the most important point of view, rather than how do I optimize between two functions that are siloed function in the business. So being able to look at these drivers in your industry and then look at how exactly this has to bring new capability to bear. Being able to mass personalize or customize to audience of one. I can no longer do mass production of anything. I have to be able to customize to individual clients, partners, and stakeholders. How do I do local adaptations if I'm operating in 5 countries? How do I make sure that a concept that makes sense, if I'm Uber, and I want to take Uber to Mexico, Uber to South Africa, how do I tailor and be able to do that in my industry? And of course, the legacy IT issues have not changed. IT still struggles to show value. IT still doesn't know how to connect and develop requirements with the business. And they don't know how to show value to the CEO. Those issues are still with us, hasn't gone away. And almost every organization that you go to, they say, we spend so much money in IT, we don't know what we get. It's almost a common theme in every organization. So can digital transformation help? The answer is yes, that's why many organizations are going in this direction. Common challenges, why agility is needed in this kind of transformation, because more and more of the projects are this kind of a profile. The requirements are not well understood. I don't know how blockchain is going to help me. All I can tell you is that there's maybe a concept that's useful to me. I have to figure out how to start to experiment. So we don't know much about requirements, we just know that it may help us. Many times we overbuild in terms of features. The averages are that more than 50% of the projects have kind of functionality that is not used by any of its users. Imagine your Microsoft Office or Excel. How much of the Excel functionality most of us use? At best, 15%, maybe 20%. 80% of that goes unused. That's why companies like Google can have Google Sheets with 20% of the functionality and still be able to deliver the same level of capabilities. So we overbuild and build too many features into our products. Projections and being able to actually do estimates is very, very difficult. This is called the cone of uncertainty. When we first start a project, we know the least about that project. But most management wants to know the exact dollar amount when you start. Tell me between 17 million and 18 million, right? Well, what do? We just pat it and say, well, maybe 25, and if I do better, maybe I got lucky. The point is that it's very difficult to accurately do any kind of estimates. So traditional methods do not really work well, especially when it comes to estimation. Especially because they require an estimate in a business case in advance. Yes, go ahead.
So how does Google monetize on the free Excel that they're giving?
Ecosystem. So think about how a Microsoft ecosystem competes with an Apple ecosystem, competes with the Google ecosystems. So when you're talking about the biggest players that we're talking about here, it's all about ecosystem. So Google has been taking 10 to 20% of their profits and building all of this free stuff. Of course, they started charging for it. Now with G Suite, now you pay 25 bucks a user and all that. But for many, many years, you could get the Google Office at no cost. You could get many functionalities from Google, from email to XYZ, all at no cost. Why they want to do that is because they want you to participate in their ecosystem compared to the Microsoft ecosystem, compared to the Apple ecosystem. And of course, if they can, they want to monetize it. But remember that the reason they can do that is because they're number one in terms of ads. Targeted. It was the only game in town until Facebook showed up with a viable model, basically. So Google used advertising as a way to subsidize that ecosystem. But once they got enough users through universities and other places, they're now charging you for it. Many organizations have started to migrate to it because it's less expensive, but then you lose something. The question is that important to you if you lose something or not? Still, you have 85% that use Microsoft Office because they want to have all kinds of remote functionality or disconnect functionality, as well as the richness that it offers for other things they want to do. That's a long discussion by itself, but ecosystem is the main answer to that question. So again, changing the paradigm is very important because our projects today are no longer predictable, and traditional methods and traditional PMI approaches are not always going to work for us. Yes, please.
I just want to comment on requirements. Not
Please.
understood. That's not always a failing of effort or anything. Sometimes the requirements are not understandable because the market's changing too fast, competitors are going to come on the horizon, etc.
Absolutely.
Requirements not defined or definable.
Exactly. It's actually more of the latter, I would argue, to your point. It's not definable. It's not that I did a poor job of understanding what you wanted. You didn't know what you wanted. You wouldn't even know until you see it in action, maybe a year from now.
And after you see it last year, but now your requirements have moved as the market's moved, etc.
Exactly, exactly. So yes, absolutely. These are the reasons why traditional methods tend to be challenged. Because of the pace of change and how the world is changing around us. So the methodology that we usually try to advocate as we talk to clients about these kind of issues and challenges is the ability to connect these things together so that when the CEO asks, why am I investing $150 million in this project? Or why are you asking for 50 more people in this function? There's a rationale to that discussion. And there's a direct line between the investments you're making in IT and projects back to the specific business reasons and the competitive strategies that you have. So that's basically the goal of this process. So the business and digital transformation strategy defines the focus that you have to have around the processes and the people that need to be there to be able to transform the business, supported by your IT and lean projects for business. So it starts with documenting, understanding your model, business model canvas, then supporting it with specific digital transformation opportunities that have a meaning to your business and your competitive line strategy, then translating that into specific value streams that create value for segments of your customer base. Being able to show those linkages and show how you will get value from that and how you will measure it is the key to success. And that's basically what I'm going to try to share with you in example and illustrations in this discussion. Okay, so these are the strategic questions. If you're trying to develop the strategic plan for organization, you usually have to ask these questions. Who's the competition? What's the value proposition? Why do people buy from us? How many different customer segments do I have? How is that customer segment changing? How is their behavior? How are their needs evolving and changing? What is our strength? What can we do to compete better in our specific industry? What can we take advantage of? Something that we do well. What are the digital opportunities? What can we do differently? Can I use artificial intelligence differently? Can I use the new concepts around conversational interfaces differently? Maybe that's where opportunities lie for my specific needs. How do I get to new markets? Can I take what I have and apply it to a different market or a different segment? How can I take advantage of some of the lean startup concepts around building, measuring, and learning, and creating these new business models? These are the kind of questions we want to ask, because it helps us define what those opportunities are in our business, and then be able to document. A very common tool these days that you may hear about is called the business model canvas. A gentleman out of Switzerland actually popularized this in the last 5 years because it's a very easy way to have a discussion around why and how you compete in your industry. What it does, it takes the business strategy and puts it into 9 key building blocks. And what this does for us is allows us to have discussions about specific things. So if I have an opportunity to go online, it's a channel discussion. If I can go to a subscription-based revenue model, it's a revenue discussion. If I can have a reduction in cost because of application of blockchain in this contract, it's a cost reduction opportunity, so on and so forth. It allows us to have these key elements all looked at and put together in a very quick diagram, a large piece of paper, and the subject matter experts who know something about my industry can have 15-minute conversations. What if we actually added a subscription model? What if Lyft could actually sell you a $30 a month model of some sort that you gave them because you had the need for a specific type of service? That's an example. What if you didn't have to just go mile per or dollars per mile kind of model? What if you actually could market differently or communicate differently to your customer? You could actually have those discussions depending on what industry you're in and what proportion of your business you're talking about. This is an example of Uber. And you can see how very quickly what they do and what they use. Their primary channel is the Uber app, obviously. That's how they deliver their service. That's how they connect you to a driver. Of course, they communicate with you and they also market to you through other channels, but this is their primary delivery channel. And their customer segments are the drivers and the riders. And then you can actually take each one of these categories and then create subsegments. Older, disabled people, that's one category. Kids needing to go to school, another category, so on and so forth. Each one of those categories then could have different models for revenue stream, for cost structure, for resources it needs, so on and so forth. It is a quick way for us to put all of this into a wall and have a discussion about it, and guess what the impact would be on our business. And then I'm giving you here the specific kind of ways that you can measure what the CEO cares about. Depending on your industry, these will be different, but this is an example. It happens to be from pharmaceuticals. The key performance indicators for this industry happens to be administrative costs, amount of inventory, lost sales and service, and their transport and warehousing capabilities. Those are the core metrics for them. Well, they need to have an idea of how they're performing against those core metrics and what is an optimal digital performance like. who's doing it, and what's possible in my industry. Once I understand through some research those ideas, then I can have a target performance. So what are you doing? You're actually talking about things that matter to how you make money in that business. And you're putting specific targets, and those specific targets then going to have specific projects associated with them. That's how we want to be able to articulate and get support for projects. This is other metrics when you're trying to do some kind of a scaled agile deployment as an example. When you first start, it takes a long time to get traction. However, if you have a team of 5,000 trying to do stuff, you better have ways of understanding what's going on. Who's doing better, who's doing worse, what can I do to help enable certain teams. There's ways that we can actually measure some of those things through a lot of self-assessments and reporting from the projects that are going on every day. This is an example of what an actual business model discussion looks like.